Hey everyone, welcome back to another lesson. So in this one, I'm going to talk about something that I'm pretty sure by now some of you might have come across, but if you haven't, it's something that you're pretty much going to going to see at some point because you're a programmer by now, and I'm sure this is gonna happen to you. So what I want to talk about, since we were talking about list and like having items in a list and things like that, and then referring to those items in the list, I want to talk about off by one error. So the idea with this is that this is a pretty common mistake. I just want to point it out that, for example, in this case, if you have a list of cities, right? And if I want to refer to them, as I said, we're going to refer to them this way, right? So we can, like, for example, say city, and then we are going to, for example, refer to London. That would be one, right? Now, this is a pretty common mistake, obviously, that because people start counting from one and then they go all the way, but obviously, as we know, this is an index, so it starts from 0 and then goes to 1, 2, 3, right? So one of the common errors, for example, whenever you want to get this the number, like the total number of the cities, this is something that we did in the previous practice that we did with last practice, right? One of the things that you sometimes might make a mistake about is that when you're trying to, let's say I'm going to get a number of cities, right? Number of cities. So if I want to get that, I'm going to get length, and then I'm going to get cities. So again, this is a common mistake, and I did mention how you deal with this, but I just want to point this out one more time. This is very, very important, because if I actually print this right now, and let's say I want to print, and I'm going to say city, and we're going to use this number of cities for the for the actual reference to these lists, or the data that we have in this list, right? So if I actually run this, we're going to get an error, right? And this is again in list index out of range error. So this is a very important one. This is something you're going to come across all the time when you program. So I just wanted to kind of show it to you in action. And again, it's just pretty simple. The idea with it is that it's out of range. This means that what you're referring to here on line 5, for example, right? So on line 5, what you're referring to, the city number of cities, this doesn't exist, because when you actually get the length of this list, technically this length function is starting from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? But if you want to get the right number, you got to have it -1. So for example, if I get this, go here and put -1, we're going to get the right number, right? Or we're going to get the right city, which is going to be the last one. There you go, Frankfurt. So I just want to point this out one more time. This is something that you're going to come across. I wanted you to see the error itself in action. Again, that list or index out of range, or off by 1, that's what they call it usually. It's just like the idea that you're off by 1, because especially when you're dealing with huge lists, this is something that you want to remember. Because right now we're dealing with really simple stuff, right? We're dealing with like list of cities. It's not a big deal. But when you get to like data science or like more complicated things, when you're like we're dealing with a list of like maybe thousands of like lines of data, maybe in a database, like that becomes a little more complicated, right? That becomes a lot more complicated, because now then you have to refer to this, and it can get really confusing, because you can make these mistakes and get these errors of things that you're trying to pull which doesn't exist actually in your data. So like, it's just something that I want you to see in action, and I want you to remember the -1 is actually a pretty big part of it, and like you can actually clean this out by paying attention to exactly what you're doing. Okay, first of all, the number of cities, or the number that you're pulling, the reference number here is very important. And also, if you have to go, you can just either do like -1 it, or you can just literally start from the end, which is like -1 in this case, and I can just refer to the same thing, Frankfurt. So I just want to make a dedicated video to this, because it's an error that I make all the time, and I just thought it would be interesting to just show it to you. Let me know if you have any questions, guys. If not, I'll see you in the next one.